Ever feel like the scariest movies aren't the famous ones, but the forgotten ones that nobody talks about? The 1970s brought us classics like Halloween and The Exorcist, but there were other films so weird, creepy, and overlooked that they'll haunt you just by hearing their names. In this video, we're diving into 10 obscure horror movies from the 1970s, and trust me, the last one will leave you wondering how it ever got made. Starting with a movie that feels less like a story and more like a nightmare you can't escape. Messiah of Evil is like a nightmare painted on screen. The story is about a young woman who goes to a small coastal town in California to find her missing father. But the town is super strange. People act cold, empty, and kind of dead inside. Slowly, she realizes they might actually be under the control of a creepy supernatural force. The whole movie is filled with bizarre and eerie moments, like undead townspeople watching her from the shadows or joining in on weird rituals. What makes it stand out is how it doesn't play like a normal horror movie. The scenes feel disconnected, almost like dream fragments, which makes you feel just as lost as the main character. The visuals are striking too. Lots of dark colors, foggy beach shots, and unsettling quietness. And just when you think it can't get stranger, things take an even darker turn. Martin is George A. Romero's unusual take on a vampire story, and it's way different from the typical Dracula-type films. The story is about Martin, a young man who believes he's a vampire. But here's the catch. You're never really sure if he's telling the truth or if it's all in his head. He doesn't have fangs, he doesn't burn in sunlight, and he doesn't turn into a bat. Instead, he attacks people by drugging them and drinking their blood. What makes it even more complicated is his family. His cousin, who is very religious, insists Martin really is a vampire cursed by demons, while Martin himself says it's just a sickness. This creates constant tension between whether he's a monster or just a severely disturbed individual. But the horrors don't stop there. This next story makes fear feel painfully real. DeathDream, also called Dead of Night, is a Vietnam War horror on another level. The film starts with Andy, a young soldier who gets killed in Vietnam. His family gets the bad news, but suddenly he shows up alive. At first, his parents are overjoyed. But Andy is not the same. He's quiet, distant, and only comes out at night. Soon, neighbors start turning up dead, and it becomes clear that Andy didn't return as a normal human. He came back as some kind of undead creature who needs blood to survive. This makes the movie more than just horror. It's also a metaphor for how war changes people.
Here's your tea, Andy.
Nothing for me, thanks.
But Andy, you have to have something. I mean, you're so thin, honey. I mean, you must have, had a terrible time.
Pretty rough over there, eh, son?
Over where?
And if that wasn't unsettling enough, the next tale shows how innocence itself can become terrifying. The Child is a really obscure 70s horror movie, but it's also one of the creepiest. The plot centers on a young girl who seems innocent at first, but there's something deeply off about her. As the film progresses, it becomes clear that she has a strange connection with dark supernatural forces. Soon, she's using these powers to control things around her, and the people who cross her path start meeting gruesome fates. What makes The Child scary isn't just the supernatural element, it's the way the movie plays on the purity of children. In this film, a child becomes the one causing terror, which makes it unsettling on a different level.
The face of an angel, the heart of a killer, the power of the devil.
But what happens when innocence isn't just twisted, but multiplied? Well, things get even more disturbing. Who Can Kill a Child could easily be one of the most disturbing horror films of the 70s. And even though it came out before Children of the Corn became popular, it deals with a very similar idea. Kids turning into killers. The story follows an English couple who arrive on a quiet Spanish island for a vacation. At first, everything seems peaceful. But soon they notice something strange. There are no adults around, only children. As they explore, they discover the shocking truth. The children have turned against the adults and killed them all. What makes the movie so unsettling is how it flips the idea of innocence. Kids are usually seen as harmless or sweet, but here they're portrayed as a violent mob, smiling while committing terrible acts. And while that flips your expectations completely, the next one proves even nature can fight back. Long Weekend is an Australian horror film that proves nature can be scarier than any ghost or monster. The story is about a married couple who go on a camping trip to a remote beach. Instead of enjoying the trip, they argue constantly and treat the environment with complete disrespect. They litter, they harm animals, they destroy plants. Basically, they show no care for nature at all. At first, it just seems like bad behavior, but slowly, the natural world starts fighting back. Animals become unusually aggressive, and it seems like everything in nature is turning against the couple. What makes the movie so effective is how it builds tension without showing obvious monsters. But if that was chilling, what comes next shows rage in its rawest, most terrifying form. The Brood is a David Cronenberg horror film that turns anger and trauma into something even more terrifying. The story follows Frank, a man fighting for custody of his daughter while his wife Nola is in a strange therapy program. This therapy doesn't just make patients talk about their feelings, it makes their emotions show up physically on their bodies. In Nola's case, her deep rage and emotional pain creates something horrifying. Deformed children that she literally gives birth to without a father. These creatures act on their anger, violently attacking people she blames for her suffering. At first, Frank doesn't realize what's going on, but as the murders pile up, the truth comes out in one of the most shocking reveals of 70s horror. And while that's shocking enough, the next story takes grief and turns it into pure horror. Don't Look Now is a psychological horror thriller that blends grief, mystery, and the supernatural in a really unsettling way. The story follows John, played by Donald Sutherland, and his wife Laura, played by Julie Christie, grieving the sudden death of their young daughter. To cope, they move to Venice, hoping for a fresh start. But Venice isn't peaceful. It's gloomy, maze-like, and filled with strange encounters. Laura meets two sisters, one of whom claims to be a psychic and says she can see their daughter's spirit.
You're sad. You're so sad, and there's no need to be. I've seen her.
John brushes it off, but he starts experiencing weird visions himself, including glimpses of a small figure in a red coat that looks just like one that belonged to his daughter. The movie slowly builds tension, making you question if John is seeing ghosts, losing his mind, or if something darker is at play. And just when you think you've seen it all, the weirdness hits a whole new level. Tourist Trap follows a group of friends traveling through rural America. When their car breaks down, they end up at Slausen's Lost Oasis, a dusty roadside wax museum run by a man named Mr. Slausen, played by Chuck Connors. At first, he seems kind and a little lonely, but soon the group realizes something is seriously wrong. The mannequins in the museum don't just sit there, they move, watch, and seem almost alive. On top of that, Slausen has strange telekinetic powers, which he uses to bring the mannequins to life and trap his visitors in terrifying ways. What makes this film stand out is its strange, dreamlike atmosphere. It doesn't feel like a regular slasher. It's slower, weirder, and way more unsettling.
Eileen? Eileen? Is that you? Eileen?
But the ride doesn't end there. Things close out with one of the most disturbing infection stories ever told. Shivers is one of David Cronenberg's earliest films, and it perfectly shows the style he would later become famous for: body horror. The movie takes place in a modern high-rise apartment building that's supposed to be safe and luxurious. But things quickly spiral out of control when a scientist's experiment goes wrong. He creates a parasite meant to replace human organs, but instead, it turns into something horrifying.
He tells me that even old flesh is erotic flesh. That disease is the love of two alien kinds of creatures for each other.
The parasite infects people in the building, spreading like a disease, and once infected, they become violent, hypersexual, and dangerous. It's like the whole building turns into a nightmare where neighbors can't trust each other and the infection keeps getting worse. When first released, the movie caused a lot of controversy because of its shocking content, but it also made Cronenberg one of the most talked about new directors. Which one shocked you the most? Drop your answer in the comments.